Well, howdy friends, Brian Flechsig of Mad River Outfitters in the Midwest Fly Fishing Schools, and welcome back to another one of our Q&A series. You know, as always, we appreciate the tons and tons of questions you all send us. As always, make sure to send them to admin@madriveroutfitters.com. Yes, via email, and that's where we'll get them. And if we can get around to them, which we're trying our best to, we print them out from email. We don't normally get to them via social media. Once again, just so you understand that, they have to come via email, and make sure you include your address. So today, I want to cover a really important and seemingly confusing subject to a lot of folks just getting started in fly fishing. And that is, what fly do I use? Friends, we get 15 questions a day that are all really similar. And I understand. I get it. You go into a fly shop and you see hundreds, maybe thousands of different fly patterns. And it can, yes, be overwhelming. And I don't know that I'm going to solve all your problems here today, but we're going to continue to work on this with you all. We're going to continue to answer your questions, and we're going to actually address this, I think, pretty well in our upcoming entomology series. Of course, we'll let you know when that's published, and if it's already published, just root around here on the YouTube channel and find that. But let's jump right in today and see if we can get you all some answers and start to help out in this often confusing subject. So our first question of the day is from Nolan Orff. And Nolan is from Scarborough, Maine. And Nolan says, "Hi Brian, I was wondering about flies. My question is, how do I know what type of fly to use when fishing? I'm heading out to Colorado on June 27th to do some fly fishing, and I don't know what flies to use. Do I use dry flies, streamers, nymphs, or what? I also do some fly fishing up here in northern Maine, and I was wondering what type of fly I should use for what season and how to determine what color to use. Looking forward to hear your response. Thank you so much." And thank you, Nolan. We appreciate you being here, tuning in, and taking the time to send a question. So let's see. Let me try to answer this question as best that I can. The first question is that you're heading out to Colorado on June 27th to do some fly fishing. Do I use dry fly, streamers, nymphs, or what? And Nolan, you're going to be trout fishing, I'm assuming, in Colorado. And on any given day, trout will typically spend some time of that day eating dry flies or adult aquatic insects on the surface. They're also typically going to be always eating nymphs under the surface, and they're typically going to opportunistically feed on streamers. In other words, given the chance, they will eat a bait fish if it comes swimming by their head. So I guess the answer is you need dry flies, you need streamers, and you need nymphs. As far as exactly what flies to use, don't overthink it. You can get yourself a few generic dry flies, say like an Adams or an elk hair caddis. You can get a few generic streamers like a woolly bugger, a muddler minnow, or of course any of Kelly Gallup's modern streamers. Just make sure you have a big enough rod and the appropriate equipment for the big articulated stuff. And then you need a few nymphs, pheasant tails, hare's ears, prince nymphs, for example, and maybe some sort of caddis larva, just a basic green caddis larva. And really, to be honest with you, you've got most of the country covered, including your home up in Maine. As far as what fly should you use for what season, it's going to behoove you to know when the best dry fly activity is going to be, usually in the spring and early summer. And then we'll switch over to terrestrials and what have you. And then, of course, what color to use. You know, nymphs are kind of brown. Dry flies don't vary that much in color. You know, I think a good piece of advice is to match the color to the stream bottom when it comes to nymphs, and if that doesn't work, then change to something bright colored. I would say, again, to sum up this question right here is actually, first and foremost, you need to speak to a local fly shop. When you're headed out to Colorado, seek out a fly shop that knows the waters you're going to be fishing and ask them what types of flies are going to be best. And maybe you just ask them for the top 5 recommendations. They should be able to give that to you if they're a good shop. And then keep it simple. If the fish are rising, throw a dry fly. If they're not rising, throw a nymph or a streamer. And then of course, stay tuned for our entomology series where we'll get kind of complicated. We'll learn a lot about bugs and how they behave. And then at the end of the series, I'll give you a list of 5 basic trout flies you can catch fish on anywhere in the world. Okay? So Nolan, stay tuned. I'm going to draw something here up on the marker board that I also, at the end of this, that I think will help you out a lot. So appreciate you tuning in and sending the question. Hopefully that helps Nolan. And let's see here, another similar question. Hey, this is from Andy Bigginton. Andy Bigginton from Canterbury, New Zealand. Well, Andy, thanks. A long distance question. Firstly, I'm just getting started in fly fishing and your YouTube channel has been a great help and source of inspiration. Appreciate that. When choosing a fly, there are so many things that come into play like time of day, time of year, water temperature, insect activity, fish behavior, weather, type of water being fished, etc., etc. Whew, I'm out of breath. That's a lot to learn. So my question is a 2-parter. How do you choose which type of fly to use? Choosing to swing a streamer instead of wet flies, for example. Well, again, Andy, if the fish are rising to the surface, I'm going to choose a dry fly. And I'm going to try to match as closely the bug that they're eating. If they're not rising, I'm going to go below the surface, knowing that they'll almost always eat a nymph and they'll almost always chase down a streamer. You might sum it up like this. If you just want to catch a couple fish, nymphing is going to be the higher percentage. If you want to catch a bigger fish, I would say streamer would be the way to go. I mean, that's just a generalized statement, not a biblical statement, but I think kind of sums it up right there. Pick a fly in your box and make it act like food. Number 2 question, which of the factors mentioned above are most important when deciding between fly types? And again, I'll go through it again. Time of day, time of year, water temperature, insect activity, fish behavior, weather, type of water being fished, etc., etc. And you know what? Of course, all of those things maybe come into play, but really, the time of year, certainly there's going to be times when dry flies are going to be more productive than others. Water temperature, that's going to dictate maybe when fish, or bugs are hatching. Of course, insect activity. Again, if you see insect activity and there's fish eating those insects, try to match it. Fish behavior, again, are they rising or are they not? Weather, weather might have more of a play on color of the fly that I use, but really not so much. Type of water being fished. You know, all of those things, Andy, that you mentioned there, yes, they matter, but then again, I'm not going to get out a calculator and enter in all this data to help me decide what fly to use. I'm going to look in my box, find a fly that I know can catch fish, and I'm going to throw it out there and I'm going to make it act like food. So I really think, Andy, that you're overthinking things. I think you should stay tuned and watch our entomology series, or if it's already been published, go watch it right now. I think that'll help you out a whole bunch. And again, stay tuned. I'm going to write something up on the board here, which I think will really help you out. So Andy Bigginton, I hope we helped you out a little bit there, man. And please stay tuned. And last but not least, another example of the many, many, many fly questions that we get. That Marvin Rios from Midvale, Utah. Marvin chimes in and says, I have a question that I'm hoping you can address on your Q&A series. Well, here you go, Marvin. I recently moved to Utah and became interested in learning about fly fishing. I watched your Getting Started in Fly Fishing series, which was very helpful. After watching it, I ended up purchasing a fly rod outfit from you guys and a few of the basics. Thank you very much. I've been out on the Provo River a few times, but haven't had any luck hooking a fish. I'm all about being outside, so I'll still enjoy it, but it'll be great to catch some fish too. I'm making sure to match my leader to my fly. I'm scouting some areas, quick moving water. It seems to be various flies. Sorry, locals recommend it. I have no idea how to determine what fly to use and when. My question to you is, how do I determine what fly and hook size I should be casting? Is it based on the location, season, current weather, size of fish you're targeting, bugs around the area, or a combination of all? Bingo.
Ooh, that's a bingo.
Combination of all. You know, the location, what kind of bugs are there, the season, what kind of bugs are active during that season. Size of fish you're targeting, again, you want to catch a bigger fish, throw a bigger fly. Bugs around the area, of course. If there's not such thing as a mayfly in those waters, you probably wouldn't fish a mayfly. So the answer is it's a combination of all of those things. And then again, just like almost everybody that's asking these questions about flies, I think you're overthinking it. Again, stay tuned. We've got a lot more coming at you. Number 2, check with the local fly shop. Get to a fly shop, call a fly shop that knows the waters that you're fishing, and try to see if you can get that information out of them of the top 5 flies. And you really don't need to go more than that. You don't need hundreds and hundreds of flies, and you don't need these flies in 8 different sizes. I mean, you know, I would say the majority of the trout flies that I fish are going to be size 12, 14, and 16, with most of them being size 14, unless there's a specific hatch going on, unless the fish are feeding selectively on a particular type of bug. Then you need to match it. That's actually going to happen so little of the time when you're fishing that, I mean, you can easily take a pheasant tail nymph, a San Juan worm, an egg pattern, or a black woolly bugger, and throw those flies out there, make them act like food, and you're probably going to catch fish. So once again, Marvin, I think you're overthinking it. Get to a fly shop and ask that question. Stay tuned for our entomology series, and you can go to madriveroutfitters.com and you can go into the nymph category, go into the dry flies, go into the caddis category, and we really strive to stock and sell only flies that we use and flies that we believe in. So you're safe. Just pick 5 dry flies, pick 5 nymphs, pick 5 streamers, and then pick a couple of San Juan worms. And I think you're going to catch fish no matter where you are, much less Midvale, Utah. Okay? So again, Andy, Nolan, Marvin, and the hundreds of other questions that we get on a weekly basis about flies. I hope that helps, and we're going to continue. Believe me, this is not the last episode. We're going to continue trying to help, but don't overthink it. Get to a local fly shop that knows the water, and stay tuned. We've got a lot more coming at you. But let me take one more minute, and let's go to the marker board, and I'm going to write something up there that I really think should hit home and really sums up our lesson for today. You're probably going to hear me say this many, many more times, but I thought it was really important to touch on a few bullet points here that I think will really help your decision making and clear up some of the confusion that I think a lot of people have, especially when they're just getting started in the sport. So fish feed basically in 2 ways, and the first way is selectively, and then fish feed opportunistically. They feed selectively, say during a hatch, when there's a hatch going on and they may be coming up to eat the dry flies, and they get very selective. They're only going to eat that certain size, certain shape, and certain color of bug. And something else comes swimming by and they don't recognize it as food. Whereas opportunistically, basically you give them the opportunity, they'll probably eat it. Fish really aren't in the habit of saying, I'm not really hungry, or I was hoping for a caddis and not a mayfly. No. If they see food, they'll eat it. The truth of it is so little of the time, for most of us, average Joe, average Jane, so little of the time of your angling life are you going to encounter selectively feeding fish. Unless you live on the banks of a river and you can walk out for the evening hatch every day, the bulk of your fishing career is going to be fish that are going to be feeding opportunistically. Again, you give them the opportunity, they'll probably eat it. My next point goes back to our good friend Kelly Gallup. I saw a video recently where Kelly was talking about his old taxidermy days. And if you don't follow Kelly Gallup in the Slide In, you should. Kelly is a mentor to all of us in the industry. We'll talk more about him later. You can see Kelly here and there on our YouTube channel. But anyhow, Kelly said that back when he used to do taxidermy and open up the stomachs of fish and trout in general, he said it would be full of all kinds of junk, sticks and stones and leaf matter. You know what, friends? You're overthinking it once again. Fish will eat almost anything, okay? So remember this rule. If it looks like food, and if you buy a fly in a fly shop, or for that matter, you tie your own fly, it probably looks like some sort of food. Plus, it acts like food. If it looks like food, and if you take it out there and using your leader, your fly line, and your fly rod, you make it act like food, you're probably going to catch a fish, okay? I really don't care what your fly pattern looks like, or necessarily what size it is. It needs to act like food, and they'll probably eat it. So therefore, that leads us to the last and final point for today, is that presentation trumps pattern. Of course, it's not always the case. Of course, some people are going to argue with that, but as a beginner, as a general statement for most of the fishing that you ever do the rest of your life, no matter what the fish, the presentation trumps the actual fly pattern, the size, the time of day, the weather, the location, the size of fish, everything. Presentation trumps the pattern. So there you have it, friends. Presentation, presentation, presentation. I think I could say having the right leader that allows the fly to behave naturally in the water might even be more important than the fly that you're casting. I don't care what your fly is. I want it to behave naturally. I want it at the right level in their water column. It might even be more important how much split shot you have in front of that nymph to get it in the right zone as to what nymph it is. Prince nymph, pheasant tail, hare's ear, caddis larva, they're all going to catch fish in all 52 states. Oh, there's only 50? In all 50 states. Okay, so there you have it, friends. Thanks for watching as always. We're going to get you guys out a hat and a fly box, and even to Canterbury, New Zealand for Andy. We need some representation down there in New Zealand. So appreciate you guys as always. Thanks for watching. Be sure to subscribe because we've got tons more coming at you. Thanks as always for watching. If you like this video, hit subscribe. It helps out a lot. And check out these videos. We think you might like them too.